Hello everyone, and welcome to the Token City show. Token City invites you to join the Token Club, a new space to master tokenization with the pioneers. It offers a wealth of knowledge and resources to propel you into the world of tokenization alongside top leaders in the space. The Token Club by Token City also provides a community where participants have exclusive access to the best professionals covering all aspects of asset tokenization. And now, let's introduce our guests. John Greaves, also known as Mr. Blockchain, is a globally recognized leader in technology who has pioneered development in DLT and blockchain. His work in the standards, regulatory, and compliance fields enables him to support the rapid adoption of blockchain technology. John has been actively involved in technology standardization for over 40 years, pioneering work in the area of global logistics, inventory management, transportation, and government. His OHIO principle, Zero Human Intervention Operations, is the backbone of the assessments and evaluations that are driving rapid adoption of blockchain technology. Hello, John, Dr. Blockchain, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Javier.
Let's go with the first question. You are very experienced in data standardization, very, very deeply experienced. And I would like to ask you, what does data standardization in complex systems such as supply chains what is the relevance of data in these fields? Why is it relevant for such systems as supply chains and other complex systems?
Well, the issue is quite simple, that in us not being able to standardize the data, in other words, the information context, you can imagine what the result is. It's multiple languages, in effect. Could you imagine how many documents in the supply chain are focused very much, especially if they're going to go international, which most supply chain issues are today, their language constant, their language standardized, first of all. All documents are French-English, English only, whatever the cause célèbre is of the language. It is quite pointless doing that if you're not also able to say that the fields behind those language-based responses are not also a standard format. The date, the time, the place. We take IATA as a classic example with their airport codes. And in so doing, we want to make sure that we follow a similar pattern when we say, well, what do we mean by ton, pound, kilo, ounce, destination, origination, optimizer? These are essential to the community as a whole, to the users, those intermediaries, the truckers and the train lines and the shipping lines and the port authorities and so on. Not to mention, of course, customs and excise always like a standard format, especially the code for what duty they will levy. So I think we have a true requirement for standardization in the data of the supply chain, utilizing a blockchain methodology. One of the leading examples of this is the current effort in the United States and rapidly spreading globally for the adoption of the TUI, the Transport Unit Identifier, which in and of itself has been found, or has found, the significant gaps in what everybody thought was a streamlined data package that everybody thought did this and did that. But in fact, it came down to the reality that it's a disconnected and disconnecting, if not dysfunctional, unitized data packet model, not a unified data model.
Understood. So by your response, we could basically say that data standardization in logistics and supply chains basically is like the Esperanto language of the world, right? Everybody has to understand each other, no matter where they are or where they come from, right? Yeah, that absolutely makes sense, yeah. Yeah, for our next question, you were interested in telling the audience about the ISO TC 307 announcement. That is highly, I suppose, highly technical. Could you explain us why you wanted to tell us about it? What is its relevance? What it is about?
Yes, I'd love to, because I'm referring to ISO, International Standards Organization, TC 307, that's technical community, in the work towards the technical standard TS 20435. This is non-fungible token standardization. It's been a long road. It is sponsored by the United States. We, the national body of the United States, which is the International Committee for Information Technology Standards, I am the chairman of the blockchain unit of that. We sponsored it as a new work item in 307 because we recognize the importance of tokens. This particular one came from an organization called OBADA, which is Open Blockchain Asset Disposition Architecture, a framework in which, at this time, electronics recycling is the subject. All electronics are being tokenized, and this allows, first of all, the digital twin model, transfer of ownership, safe and effective disposal, recycling values being correctly calculated and paid for, and so many more removals of negatives across that particular sector, electronics recycling. It is not restricted to that. The intent is, as the non-fungible token asset identification and utilization standard progresses, other sectors will climb on board and say, oh yes, absolutely. If I can do that the same way, then I get the same benefits and I get a much lower cost of implementation, which is really the key to it. At this moment in time, electronics recycling is, for all intents and purposes, a cowboy industry. It dumps. We all have example articles from across the world of what happens to our waste and where it goes and who it impacts. That's really not acceptable, is it?
Yeah, it is not. You just said that electronic device recycling is being tokenized. What is the extent to which, right now, at present, that is the case?
I'd love to say that it's worldwide and every electronics in the world is suddenly a token. No, I'm afraid not. That's why we moved to standardization, in effect to provide an instrument. Now, I have to be fair. If you were to speak to the OBADA founder and the project editor of this particular standard, a gentleman called Rohi Sukhia, you would find that his membership of his previously what was a trade organization, OBADA, includes the big names, the Intels, the Toshibas, the Dells, the people you would expect. And they have been instrumental in driving it forward. They have no desire to be known as pariahs or negatives on the world's environment or peoples. So they have been the models, as it were. Many of their units have had OBADA principles applied to them. They have adopted the architecture on certain models, and they are in circulation under this tokenization model and architecture. What progress has been made in making it universal, I'm not fully aware of. I can't follow every single item at every single level, but I enthuse about this one because its benefits are so enormous, and it already has blue chip flag bearers, which is fundamental. But what it needs most of all is TS 20435 to give it the teeth that when you take it to governments, the EU, environmental agencies and authorities, countries who are being the unwilling or unwitting recipients of these negatives, they go, ah, yes, I can implement that because my place in that architecture is here, and this person here will now respond to me in the same way and in the same accountability model.
So this is an effort by an organization that will likely end up being reflected into law by virtue of how it is being proposed, who is implementing it, and how beneficial it would be. That's awesome, really. And one question. Do you know what platforms are being used for the traffic of these tokens? Which ones are being favored?
I don't, but it's rather interesting that the next plenary meeting, so that's the multinational gathering of TC307, is in June, and please forgive my pronunciation, it's in Valladolid in Spain. And I will send you details, and I am sure you can reach out to the Spanish delegation who are hosting it and Spanish standards, and they will be delighted to have Spanish representatives of blockchain-related industries come along, if only, sir, to the cocktails, which are quite nice. And it being down the road, as it were, from you, most useful. I expect this broadcast and your work will engender a significant attendance in Spanish.
Be greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for that. I will take your word for that. Now, let's go to our next question. You say you are a proponent of data focused on value models, and you specify not simply data for data's sake. Yeah. How does blockchain technology improve data acquisition and management for supply chains? How does blockchain help not have data for data's sake?
Oh my goodness. You posed the biggest question of the day with your mom. The reason is because right now, information technology is packets. Silos, in effect, of information. And everybody's comfortable with that because they don't understand that in transferring their packet of tea to the person who actually turns that tea into coffee, that they pass them a baton that has to be re-engineered. In so doing, you weaken its original content because you have to modify some of its values in order to make it coffee, not tea. In my usual presentations on the subject of legacy information technology, I'm afraid I'm rather, I use a Spanish humor, or at least my version of Spanish humor, because I talk about nocilos, and I pretend that it is in fact a Spanish word. I put it up on the screen and I go, and of course, ladies and gentlemen, our biggest challenge is nocilos. And they all immediately assume, of course, it's Spanish. And then what happens is the no evaporates and it's silos. And this is the core problem. Blockchain does not make silos, does not make packets. Blockchain in enterprise data, aka supply chain as an example, is a continuum of data. It prohibits any tampering with that data. That's what makes it very effective cybersecurity tool. It's what allows the generator of the original intent of that data to manage the access to it and to be aware of when and if anyone unauthorized or wishes to tamper with it, to change a value in there, to change what dye they used to make the t-shirts so that we're not shipping 1 million t-shirts that are slightly off shade from the shorts that are coming from another place, leading to colossal wastage in the billions and billions of dollars worldwide that could be so easily prevented when you turn a supply chain procurement requirement into a blockchain package rather than silos, packets of data exchanged between numerous parties, often not aware of who the other party is or whether the other party would like to know that the ship is 3 weeks late, or actually you'll need 41 trucks, not 40 trucks. Oh, so many issues that I myself and many others have dealt with. It also touches, of course, on the structure of companies today. Most companies vested in legacy information technology believe that they're working at the state of the art. They believe that they're in good order, whereas in fact, it's actually legacy thinking from legacy people. Dr. Maitland Hislop at the University of Buckingham in England will talk of industrial hardening. He is also, of course, a cybersecurity expert and well respected across many industries. He would tell you that the challenge is changing a company's mindset about how legitimate it is, how its data acquisition and data values are being fairly and properly and reasonably represented. They, in fact, are paying far too much for a dysfunctional system in the main, and they hold it together with Band-Aids, and the Band-Aids are very, very lucrative for the Band-Aid providers.
Yeah, understood. Just a short follow-up question. I mean, I would like to ask many more, but we have limited time. So, but is it the case that this legacy technology involves still a lot of manual processing? And that's why there are so many mistakes, because it sounds kind of awkward. Like, is it really the case that we're still in that situation?
Yes, indeed. Well, it is bad to note, isn't it? They know all of the processes we have that are data acquisition processes, that we find ourselves still heavily reliant on manual input, manual override. Why would I need manual override? Perhaps I don't want the person, the recipient of my data, my information, to be aware that it's not exactly what it was. So we amend data. Nobody should amend data. I was involved some years ago in then a quite big scandal, which was false bills of lading on the Atlantic, violating the cube weight ratio rules of the Transatlantic Shipping Conference. And it was like, why would you do that? Well, because it saved a lot of money. But it also had the problem that it gave a false impression of the load weight of the vessel, which in storm circumstances can lead to the most dreadful outcome, because it's imbalanced, it's not properly loaded. And this is one example of where humans, in good faith in many instances, by accident in others, just, you know, they were typing in 10764 and they put in 10647. Okay, a big deal? Maybe not, but it shouldn't happen. It just simply shouldn't happen. And of course, it contravenes what is my mantra for the last 40 years, the Ohio principle: zero human intervention operations. I'm not throwing people out of work. There's plenty of work in the world. I'm asking people not to interfere in a data stream, and blockchain provided me finally with the tool that says, actually, you got no choice. You got to let it go. And here's what you're letting go. You're not going to be there on time. You are going to charge $37 a ton, and so on and so forth. I have a several-hour presentation that anyone can be bored to tears with if they wish, that illustrates this in a much more planar fashion by basically showing all of the data of a single transaction and its consequences when it's in the current packet silo environment and the zero risk in blockchain.
Wow, that I mean, really, the example you gave really is dreadful, and hopefully the solution to that type of situation can't come soon enough, really. I wanted to ask you to touch a little bit on the case of healthcare. Healthcare is important for everybody. So how does this apply to healthcare? You have worked on it. Is it in the supply chain side? Is it in the services provision side? How does it work?
Oh my good. If healthcare were to uniformly, unilaterally switch to a blockchain-enabled environment, the impact would be enormous. Healthcare, whether you choose American pay-for-service, somewhat socialized medicine these days, the socialized medicine of most European countries, as it's referred to, it doesn't matter which version you look at. Look at healthcare for underprivileged or underserved communities in poorer nations, appalling. Look at every side of healthcare. Let's start with who owns your healthcare data? Not you, you're the patient, right? Why isn't it in your pocket? Why do you have to go to a third party, provide them with passwords that in the main, they arbitrarily will tell you it's not the right password. How do I know this? It happened to me this week, right? And I had to go through so many hoops. If I am extremely unwell, I'm not, thank God. But if I was extremely unwell and I am now or aged and somewhat feeble, I'm aged but not yet feeble. But if I was, the exasperations of accessing healthcare services, providers, data, etc., is astronomical. The provider community, they don't like it either, but then you come up against the logjam. The provider says they don't like it and they'd like to work this way. The patient says they don't like it and they'd like the provider to work that way. The provider says they can't because regulation says they can't, and regulation says they can't change it because it's how it is. That's all we can do. I'm sorry about that. When you go to a healthcare meeting, and I have been to many, I was at one time the chairman of the IEEE Blockchain in Healthcare Standards Committee, and I have to tell you, I resigned. One of the very few times in my entire working life that I have resigned from a committee. And the reason I resigned was because there were so many interests in that committee. Each identified a shortcoming of their current model. Each said blockchain could resolve it, but none of them really were of a mind to cross the Rubicon to blockchain. And they would have these sort of 10 things as to why they couldn't, but yes, they should. And it would benefit this way and it would benefit that way. Just the simple argument, patient identification. Oh my goodness. I forget the last count I did of how many groups around the world under various charters are working on identification. Even though there are numerous existing extant identification models that could be applied, but then again, we have to, the challenge in healthcare is the transition, the adoption of a totally new way to do it. Now, there are some very good localized examples. There are some very good niche healthcare rollouts that are blockchain based. But if you go to the massive healthcare exhibition here in the United States every year, HIMSS, you can walk through that hall, you might see 10 blockchain-based deliverables. You will see incredible new clinical devices that do work. That, let's be fair, all of this stuff works, yet they're running on old-fashioned data and old-fashioned password and old-fashioned do this and old-fashioned do that. Where is their blockchain mechanics? Where is their integrity certification path in a blockchain that is ubiquitously ready to be read by the person who is about to be the person put under this device, the doctor who's doing it, the nurse who's handling it, and the hospital who's charging for it, and the insurer who's paying for it. It's not. It's comes with, you know, maybe a barcode. Well, whoopee.
And understood. Well, maybe in the case of the healthcare sector, it won't be from the industry to the government, but from the government to the industry as a result of other industries doing the work, I suppose. Now let's, if you like, jump to the last question because we are running out of time. I wanted to ask you if there are new, I mean, we've discussed a lot of things that are being done and that could be done, but is there anything that you haven't mentioned yet regarding what you would like to see in blockchain-based standardization of data?
Oh, a lot. For all progress, first of all, we have to talk about the difference between blockchain. Oh, John, you can't have a difference. You just told us that. No, I'm not talking about a difference of blockchain. I'm talking about the two blockchains. There is fintech, that which is concerned with financial technologies. The origination, if you will, of blockchain, it was seen as a more effective instrument with a lot more security for the transfer of currencies, aka tokens, aka bills of whatever, smart contracts, and enterprise blockchain, which in my world, I head up the Enterprise Blockchain Initiative at Florida Tech. And in our world, we're talking about information technology in the sectors, in the supply chain, in healthcare, etc. And in that respect, what we're finding is that the legacy information technology packets, who all thought they were like wonderful packets of genius, we found them to be singularly missing X, Y, and Z, particularly important elements that were assumed. So what we've got is we've got an assumption. And in blockchain, we want standards to drive the visibility, the clarity of what's missing and how adding it would give you so much more beneficial information, so much more value, so much more timeliness. There's so many uses of a blockchain data packet as opposed to legacy packets or silos. And in that respect, standards, I believe, can significantly influence regulators. For at the end of the day, not just in healthcare, most sectors, the current TUID effort led by Michael Darden is in fact being taken on board by the federal government at last. 4 years to get federal buy-in. But my goodness, if they were to say, okay, all product coming into the UK will now have a TUID, we're done. You know, we've totally transformed that part of whatever part there is. There are, as you know, a lot of moving parts. But I think that sums it up, that standards bodies benefit regulators because standards are voluntary and are agreed by those who are going to be, shall we say, the victims of them. They have voluntarily agreed to become victims. Yet regulators impose those regulations on people and victimize them with penalties, fines, loss of business, etc. I think it's better if users drive blockchain and users identify, I'm going to use this because I never knew what I didn't have.
Understood. Completely agreed. John, we are approaching the end of the interview. I'd like for you to take a little time, if you want, tell the audience where they can find you, anything you want to tell the audience.
I will indeed. You can find me at Florida Tech in Melbourne, Florida. You can find me on my email, which is wgreaves, because my first name is William, but I never use it. I'm John. wgreaves, Greaves, which incidentally my family took from the Spanish language. You can look it up, it's leg armor, at my.fit.edu. And I would be very pleased to receive any requests, inquiries, clarification, notes, etc. I spend my life making sure people make the good move with blockchain, and I am delighted to support those people who want to make the move, because frankly, if you're not in blockchain, or you do not have substantial blockchain re-engineering in your organization of whatever kind, government, institutional, corporate, by 2035, you may well be out of the business system, the commercial world.
Great, thank you so much, John. This has been thoroughly enjoyable. Thank you so much for coming in the show. I hope we stay in touch. Definitely thank you for your previous offer. Thank you and take care.
I thank you, sir. Good day.
You too. Take care. Bye-bye. This was John Greaves, an experienced, very knowledgeable and wise expert on logistics and supply chains. Please don't forget to check out the Token Club by Token City. Thank you and goodbye.